Hello, everybody. It is 11:01, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And thank you all for being here. Um, so I want to encourage folks to go ahead and put any questions that they have throughout this presentation in the chat. You can also use the Q&A box. I think it's a little easier to use the chat. And slides will be distributed to attendees after the presentation. And I also wanted to let folks know about some upcoming events. So we have our two events coming up on May 30th. We have our Paying Family Caregivers webinar that is at 11 a.m., which is very related to the event we're doing today. And then again on May 30th, we have Addressing Senior Hunger and SNAP, and that's at 1 p.m. Also pretty relevant to our topic today. So we'll go ahead and jump in. So my name is Caroline Springer. I'm the Melkus Fellow here at the Tennessee Justice Center. I do casework, and I primarily work with older adults, seniors, and disabled adults, particularly with the Choices program. So I'm really grateful that you all are here to talk about this program. It's complicated, and I hope that hopefully by the end you feel like you have a better grasp on the process. And we'll jump right in. And just to give an overview, this is going to be a little bit of a review for any folks who are joining me again from Tuesday, just a little about the Tennessee Justice Center and the work that we do. So one of our big focuses is direct services, that is individual client representation. For someone in my role, that means I'm doing casework, working with clients one-on-one. We also have our litigation, where we will represent clients. We also promote enrollment on healthcare and nutrition programs, primarily TennCare, SNAP. We also work with WIC. And to continue off of that, I want to talk about our impact work. So we do class action litigation to correct systemic issues. That's on our legal team. We also advocate for legislative and administrative changes on a state and federal level. So to give two examples of some projects we have going on right now, we've got the Paying Family Caregivers campaign, which you can learn more about on our webinar on May 30th. And we also have the Elderly Simplified Application Project, or ESAP for SNAP. And I want to go over today's agenda, what we'll be talking about today. For folks who are joining me again from our presentation on Tuesday, we talked about the financial aspect of Choices. It's quite complicated. And today we're going to be talking about the medical portion of Choices, which is predominantly the PAE test, which stands for Pre-Admission Evaluation. So first I'm going to go over a little overview of the Choices program. Then I'll get into the PAE test. That'll be the bulk of what we talk about. I'll talk about ADLs. Those are activities of daily living. Those are going to be what the PAE test goes over. And then I'll talk about some tips and tricks to keep in mind if you are trying to get a PAE test for Choices, or you are assisting someone in your life with that process. So to go over an overview of Choices, we've got 3 Choices categories. Our first one is Choices 1. That's going to be nursing home care, folks who want to go to a nursing home. We've got Choices 2. That's a full array of HCBS. That's home and community-based services. This is also a full-time array of services, but that's going to happen in a different setting. That might be a home setting, or a community setting, such as an assisted living facility. And then we have Choices 3, which is a limited HCBS, or limited home and community-based services. And that's going to be a part-time array of services. So our Choices 1 and 2 are going to be our full-time care, and the difference between those two programs is the setting that you choose to receive your care. And then Choices 3 is going to be your part-time program for folks who are needing some support in their daily life, but they're not ready for that full-time care. All right, now to talk about the bulk of this presentation today, we're going to talk about getting the PAE test. This can be tricky sometimes, and so it can be helpful to know what to expect, what the PAE test is, so that you can be better prepared going into it. I want to talk about how to apply. This first point is really going to determine what steps you're going to need to take. So if the person is on TennCare, you're going to need to call your MCO. That's going to be Blue Care, United, or WellPoint. WellPoint is formerly called Amerigroup. So you're going to want to look at your TennCare card and see who that is. There will be a number on that card. If you have a direct contact at your MCO, you want to contact them, but I think for most folks, you're going to be calling that number on the back of your card. And then if you are not on TennCare, you're going to want to call the Area Agency on Aging and Disability, or we call AAAD. And those are the two pathways there. So I want to talk about an overview of when you call to try to get your PAE test. And again, that's a pre-admission evaluation. The thing you're going to want to say is, I want a PAE test for the Choices program. You might need to be a little bit persistent. For example, an MCO representative may not know right off the bat what that is, but as long as you communicate clearly, your MCO representative should be able to get the referral to the right person who can get you that PAE test. You will likely have to complete an initial screening phone call. That's more with the AAAD. That's going to be the option if you're not already enrolled on TennCare. And one important thing is to make sure that the caller, if you are the person calling, you're trying to enroll, or if you are calling on behalf of someone in your life, you're going to want to make sure that you are interested in the services that Choices offers. This is an important point that can be a struggle for folks. If you express that you are only interested in getting TennCare, the person you're talking to might think you don't need the Choices services or you're not interested in them. So it's really important to make sure to express that you are interested in those services that Choices offers, because the Choices program, you can only get on the Choices program if you are medically eligible and you're interested in those services that are being offered. And then once somebody is enrolled on Choices, they will automatically get TennCare as well. So in some cases where someone has very limited healthcare options, they're not eligible for TennCare in another way, Choices may be a good option for them. But you just want to really convey that you are interested in the Choices program itself. Yes. So I want to talk about calling the AAAD, or the Area Agency on Aging and Disability. Again, you're going to want to make sure to say, I want a PAE test for Choices, just to make sure you're clearly communicating that. Every AAAD office is different. Sometimes that will be enough to get you your test. But every caseworker is different, and these offices are across the state. So you'll just want to be persistent in communicating that you'd like that test. If you're not able to get in contact with one of those offices within a week, you can call our office. If you are already working with one of our TJC client advocates, feel free to call us and let us know, because you should be able to get in contact within a week. Oftentimes you'll be able to get in contact much more easily than that. All right, and then to continue off of that, for calling the AAAD, what's likely going to happen is you'll complete an initial screening call. They may ask you some questions. What are you struggling with? They might ask you about ADLs. We're going to touch on that a little bit later. They might ask you things about, can you drive? Can you get out of bed? Can you get dressed in the morning? And what you're hoping for is that the next step will be that person will go ahead and say, all right, great, we'll schedule the PAE test. You might be told, hey, we'll give you a call back in a couple of days to set that up. But the most important thing is making sure you complete a full PAE test. Again, choices is quite complicated. So you'll just want to make sure that if you want a PAE test and you're interested in that, you should be able to get one. And you'll want to make sure you complete it fully. And that means that you receive a score. And again, like I was saying earlier, you want to make sure that you are interested in the services that Choices offers, because the Choices program is set up for people who need these services. And one of the great benefits of it as well is that you can get TennCare once enrolled. You automatically get TennCare once enrolled. And then let's say that you've already had your PAE test. What you're going to want to do at that point is follow up with your caseworker. Applying for choices really happens either through your MCO or through the AAAD. And that's who you're going to want to be working with throughout this process. So after a PAE test has been completed, you will want to ask your caseworker for your score. That'll be a number score. It could be something like 1, it could be 3, it could be 9, it could be 15. It'll be something in that range. I think the highest score I've personally seen is a 17. So it'll be something within that range. If you score a 9 or higher, that means you do meet the nursing home level of care. That's going to qualify you for choices 1 or 2. If you have a lower score, anything above a 0, you might be eligible for choices 3, but that program is a little more complicated. So it will really depend. Another thing after your PAE test, what will happen is a completed PAE test, your caseworker is going to send that completed PAE test to TennCare and await approval. So there's really 2 stages of the PAE test. There's you complete it with your caseworker through the agency. They give a score, and then it's going to be sent to TennCare, and TennCare is ultimately who is going to approve or deny that PAE test. And one of the big things with that is making sure you have sufficient medical records. TennCare is going to be trying to make sure that you really qualify for this program and that you really need these services. So you just want to make sure you're giving them as much information as you can with those medical records. And your PAE test is not fully approved until it's been approved with TennCare. And at this point as well, you can decide if the program is the best fit for you. I advise my clients on this a lot. Some people are not really sure. They've never really considered an option like this, receiving this kind of support or care. And they're not too sure about the program. And I really encourage folks, I would recommend you get the test just to see if you qualify, because you can get a PAE test as many times as you'd like. And at the end of your PAE test, you can say, this is great, but I'm not really interested in this at this time. That's perfectly fine. So there's no penalty for that. And there's also no wait list for choices. So just to bear those things in mind. Scores, a really big thing with a PAE test is your score and knowing your score. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but for choices 1 and 2, again, that's going to be your full-time services. You're going to need a PAE score of 9 or higher. Could be a 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up to, the highest I've seen is 17. That program is probably going to be pretty straightforward. And at that point, your caseworker will assist you into the next stage, which will be your financial application. And that's what we went over on Tuesday. And then we have choices 3. Choices 3 is a little bit more complicated. Choices 3, again, is that those part-time services. It is also sometimes called at-risk choices, meaning that you are considered a nursing home risk, someone who needs some support and care in your daily life. Otherwise, you may be at risk of perhaps needing to be institutionalized. So for choices 3, you're going to need a PAE score of at least 1. So it can't be a 0. But again, it's a little more complicated. Anywhere in between a 1 and an 8, right, is potentially a choices 3 case. But really the better metric to weigh if someone might be eligible for choices 3 is to assess if they are needing support and care with the ADLs at least 4 days a week. That's something I ask my clients, are you someone who's going to need a caregiver to come over about 4 days a week? And if they say, no way, I don't need that kind of support, it's unlikely that they would pass that test. But again, if you have any interest in the program, you can always get that test just to see what it's all about. Choices 3 also has limited spots. As of right now, as far as we know, this program is not full. So there are open spots still available. That could change in the future. But again, there's no wait list for any program of choices. Choices 3 used to be a case where you needed to be on SSI to qualify. That is not the case anymore. So if you ever run into an issue where someone says, oh, you can't get on choices 3, that's only for people on SSI. That rule was changed in October of 2022. So you just want to make sure, for example, if you get a PAE test and it's denied, you'll want to reach out to your caseworker and say, hey, have I been fully screened for choices 3 or at-risk choices? Just to make sure that that has been fully evaluated. Now I'm going to talk about ADLs. I've been talking about these, but haven't really gone into what exactly they mean. So ADL stands for Activity of Daily Living. So you've got your PAE test, that's your pre-admission evaluation. And the way that they score that PAE test is going to be through ADLs, or Activities of Daily Living. So I have this screener here on the left. These are questions that I would ask a client to assess if they may be eligible for the Choices program and to kind of prepare them for what to expect, what kinds of things they're going to ask about. And then you can see here on the right, this is the way that they score the PAE test. It's a little bit complicated. You don't really need to worry about this, but these are the different things that they ask about and kind of how they score them. So the first thing that they will ask about is transferring. They're going to ask you, can you get in and out of bed in the morning? Can you get out of bed in the morning? Can you get in and out of a chair? Can you get in and out of a shower, a bathtub? That's what transferring is really talking about. Transferring from one location to another. They're going to ask about mobility. If you can walk on your own, unsupported, if you need assistance, such as a cane or a walker. It's very important to tell someone, if you have a history of falling, and you want to give details about that history of falling. For example, if you have ever needed to be hospitalized, if you've ever needed medical attention, if you've ever needed emergency services due to a fall, you want to include that because those medical records can really help boost your score higher and ensure that you have a higher chance of qualifying for the program. You also want to say, explain with falling, for example, some people are able to get back up on their own unassisted. Some people really struggle and will need a lot of time. They might need the support of another person. All of those details are very relevant here. The next thing they'll ask about is eating. And a lot of folks I talk to, they're at this point where they need some assistance, but they're not quite they may not exactly qualify. So somebody who is really looking for assistance with, I need some help with cooking, cleaning, and housework, that is likely going to be just below that choices 3 line. So for eating, what this test is specifically asking is, can you feed yourself? Meaning, can you put food in your own mouth? Do you need someone to feed you? That's what they're asking there. They're gonna ask about toileting, they might ask about a catheter, um, and things like that. So for toileting, what I ask my clients, do you need any help with toileting? That could be like transferring, getting in and out of the chair. It could be assistance with cleaning, anything like that. If you're needing help with that, they'll ask about that. The next thing is orientation. So they're going to ask, do you know who people are? Do you know where you are? What is your orientation like? They're going to ask about expressive communication and receptive communication. So expressive would be talking, can you let people know what you want? Hey, I want to go lay down. I want a drink of water. Can you communicate effectively what your needs are? Receptive communication is going to be, can you understand what people are saying to you? If your caregiver is telling you something, can you understand what that means? The next question they'll ask, can you take your medicine by yourself? So similar to eating, they want to know, can you physically put the medicine in your mouth and take it, swallow it? Another point I ask folks is, do you remember to take your medicine? That's really important, if you struggle with your memory, you don't remember to take your medicine, you want to make sure to inform them of that. A little trick is if you take eye drops and you're not able to put them in by yourself, you'll want to tell them that, because that can potentially boost your score a little bit. Because that's considered sort of like a medication. And then the last thing they will ask is about your behavior. They are going to ask how you act. Particularly, they're kind of looking for if the person has dementia or maybe has a family history of dementia. And yeah, you can work with this agency to assess. For example, I've had a client who said, I don't really want anyone taking care of my family member because she has these behavioral health needs and she's very intense and she's very emotional, and I know her so well and I know how to care for her properly. And of course, that's a very trusting relationship. But you can talk to the agency and say, hey, I have these behavioral health concerns. I want to make sure this person is placed with a caregiver who really understands how to work with that. So they should be accommodating if you bring that up, hey, we need a caregiver who can work with someone who has these behavioral needs. Next, we're going to get into the tips and tricks. So the first thing with the tips and tricks, this will be my first thing I will say is, when you're making that initial call saying, hey, I want a PAE test, I would recommend asking for that to be in person if possible. You can always request it be in person. I don't think I've ever had someone be told, no, we're not going to come in person, as long as you ask. So yeah, make sure you ask for that test to be in person, and the caseworker should come out to your home. This can add some really helpful context. It can really help the person doing the test to see how you live, to see your demeanor, the physical condition that you're in. It can really just help them really understand the situation better. Another point is you want to make sure you have sufficient medical records. This documentation is going to be really important for ensuring that your test is approved with TennCare. The next thing is, I always recommend this. The enrollee, the person seeking to enroll in choices, you're going to want to have, if at all possible, someone there with you. This could be really anybody. So a trusted friend, a family member, a caregiver, and that person can be really helpful for adding details. So when they ask questions like, can you get out of bed in the morning? The person seeking to get on choices might say, yeah, I can get out of bed in the morning. But maybe the family member or the friend will say, okay, but that's really hard for you, and I can tell how hard that is for you. it can just help to have a second person there helping advocate for you. And something I've also found is that a lot of folks living with disabilities have gotten really used to becoming independent and accommodating their condition, working around it. They're very resourceful. And it can be hard to really admit the extent to which someone might be struggling and to say, hey, actually, I have a really hard time getting out of bed. I have a really hard time walking from my bedroom to the kitchen to feed myself. Because you've gotten used to, the disabled person might have gotten used to the way their life is, but they might not always acknowledge, I'm actually going through some things that are really challenging. And so it can help to have another person there. I mean, everyone's going to be different for how they explain how their conditions affect them. The biggest thing we recommend is just be truthful. And explain, give them all the information you can, give details, explain the process, and we'll touch on that in the next slide. So, like I said, give details and explain the process. So you want an in-person PAE test. You're going to want someone there with you who can help support you, and make sure you're really giving all those details. And then, yes, giving details and explaining the process. This is an example I use all the time. If they ask you, can you get out of bed in the morning? Some people say, yes, I can get out of bed in the morning. But you want to make sure to add any relevant details. So to say, yeah, I can get out of bed in the morning, but I'm pretty stiff. I have to lay there for a little bit and really kind of stretch. Takes me about 45 minutes, and I have to go slow, and I have to lean my hands on the table beside me because my balance is off, and I'm worried I might fall. And then, or like, yes, I can get out of a chair, but I feel really exhausted. It's a lot of exertion and effort to do that. Or another example is, yeah, I can get dressed in the morning, but it takes me 45 minutes to button the buttons on my shirt. So any kind of details like that are really relevant here. We touched on this earlier, but you want to ask for your score. If you're not if the person says, oh, you didn't get a score, that is a red flag. That is a sign that you probably did not complete a full PAE test. So because a fully completed PAE test will have a score. That score might be 0, but if someone's not able to give you a number at all, that's probably an indication that you haven't fully completed the test. We touched on this earlier as well. You want to disclose if you have a history of falling, because it can really help. Those medical records can really help supplement your application. The last thing, and a lot of people aren't familiar with this test, you can ask for a safety determination. So what should happen is if you get a PAE score of 5 or higher, it should be automatic. A safety determination is an additional test where they're assessing if you're safe to live in your own home. You can always request a safety determination. If your score is lower, you can say, hey, I want a safety determination. Can we get a safety determination? And they should do that test. And that is like an additional test that can potentially supplement your application. Yeah, so that's everything I have for you all today. Please put I'll be around to answer questions. I see a couple in the Q&A box now. But I'm really grateful for you all for being here and for listening to this information. Choices is quite a complicated program, so thank you for your time and attention. And again, the slides will be distributed after, and we've got those 2 events coming up on May 30th. Okay, I've got a question about how many hours of service a client can receive for each category. That is a great question. So it will really depend. That is a great question. So once you get your approved PAE test, and again, that means it's been fully approved with TennCare, you've completed your financial application, you've gotten all those documents in, you're fully approved. At that point, what's going to happen is if you don't already have an MCO, you'll be assigned an MCO, and they're going to come to your house and do either over the phone or come to your house and do an evaluation and assessment of your needs. So that is the point where they will determine how many hours of service that you can get. And that'll be very individual to what that person's needs are. Choices 1 and 2 are going to be full-time. So choices 1 is going to be in a nursing home. That'll be 24/7. Choices 2, it's basically TennCare does not want it. They will not allow you to receive care that is more expensive than a nursing home would be. Generally the cap is 40 hours a week. It's very hard to get up to 40 hours a week. It's likely going to be more, it'll be lower. Yeah, I have clients who are on choices 2, they get 20 hours a week. So it'd be like 20, 30, if it's really necessary, you could get up to 40. Choices 3 is going to be more like 8 to 15. That's not an exact number, but it'll be, caregiver comes over for a couple hours, a couple days a week. So I hope that helps. All right, our next question is respite care covered in choices 2 or 3, or a day center for a disabled person covered in 2 or 3? I'm not sure off the top of my head, but let me write that down and check on that for you. So we've got respite care. You're asking about choices 2 or 3, or a day center. And if you want to put your email in the chat, I can see if I can get an email back to you about that. Day center for a disabled person. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to write this down. Okay. All right, our next question. That is a great question. Can a family member be a caregiver? I think you might really enjoy our or maybe not enjoy, but find our we have our Paying Family Caregivers webinar on May 30th. My coworker Vanessa has done a lot of great work on that. The really frustrating thing about a family member can be a caregiver, yes, but they cannot live in the same home as the person, which is really tricky, and something that that is something we would like to change. We'd like to see that change. That, for example, I had a client who, it was 2 sisters who lived in a house, and one of the sisters was disabled, and the sister really wanted to take care of her disabled sister, but she couldn't do so while living in the home, which is really frustrating. There's 2 different options for a caregiver through choices. You can be assigned one through the agency, or you can also pursue this option called consumer direction. And that's where you actually pick out your own caregiver, and then they get, I believe they get assigned to an agency, and they have to be approved, and they have to have a background check, things like that. Yes, a family member can be a caregiver so long as they don't live in the same home as that person. Okay, you're asking about clients with a language barrier. That's a great question. Yeah, so consumer direction might be a good option for that. I had a client a few months ago, their family spoke Arabic, and the client explained, I already know someone who in my life who speaks Arabic and knows how to take care of my family member. Can that person be the caregiver? And the answer is yes, as long as they don't live in the same home, and as long as they're approved. So that's what you do with consumer direction. So if you know someone in your life who speaks the appropriate language, I don't know if the agencies would have someone who speaks the correct language. I would ask about that when you're doing your application. Hey, this person speaks this language. That's the language they're most comfortable in, and especially when you're in your home, or receiving care, you really want to get that in a language that you are familiar with and comfortable with. Yeah. I have had a client who their family is Spanish speaking and the caregiver speaks English. So I'm not exactly sure how they work around that. I think some folks in the family speak English. So yeah, that would be a great question to ask whoever you're working with, your MCO representative or the triple AD, and I would really hope that they would work with you. All right, we've got another question. That's a great question. Yes, you can have as many PAE tests as you'd like, and you're asking if there's a wait period between times of having multiple PAEs. So the biggest thing with that is you can get a PAE test if you're if there's anything you would want to change. For example, maybe you had your test over the phone, you want it to be in person. Like those factors will really affect, could potentially really affect your score. There's no official wait period, but a big thing you can say to them is, hey, you know, my condition has gotten worse. My condition has gotten worse. My needs have changed. So I really need this test again. And they should be receptive to that. That's a big, if your conditions have not changed, you're still at the same level and you've done all those things, you know, you've given them details, you've gotten the test in person at home. They might tell you, you know, hey, you can't get a test at this time. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. If your condition has worsened, there was something else I was gonna say. But there's no, oh, the other thing you can do is say, hey, how do I appeal this decision? And if I have had a client be very, very persistent, and actually in the end, she was able to get on choices that way. So if you have a PAE test, they scored you a 0, you're not eligible, you can say, how can I appeal this? And they should be able to guide you with that. It's not a standard TennCare appeal. It's not going to be, it'll be through, you know, I work mostly with folks, I guide them through the process of working with the triple AD or the Area Agency on Aging and Disability. So yeah, I hope that helps. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. All right, you have a client receiving 12 hours a week on category 2. Is that correct? Okay. In that case, I would recommend if the person should have a care coordinator, and you would want to get in touch with that person and say, hey, you know, we are really trying to get more hours. Can we get another assessment? Can we get another PAE test? Can we appeal? Like, what can we do to get more hours? I'm thinking of a client who is on choices 2, and they were receiving 16 hours a week on category 2. And they talked to their care coordinator and said, hey, you know, we really need more hours. This isn't enough. And that care coordinator came back out. They did another test. They said, okay, we're going to approve you for 20. So they got a few more hours that way. Yeah, great. I'm just going to move quickly over to the chat. Got a question in the chat. That's a great question. Okay, so it sounds like your mother is in an assisted living facility and you're paying a private caregiver for an additional 24 to 30 hours a week to be with your mother to assist with ADLs because she needs more hands-on care than the facility staff can provide. The facility have the staff to provide. Yeah, based on the description, it sounds like your mother would be appropriate for choices, yes. So you would want to, if she's not on TennCare, you'd want to call the triple AD and ask for that PAE test. I'm not sure if the assisted living has a social worker there. If you're when folks are interested in nursing homes, what we generally recommend is, you know, look at nursing homes in your area and go tour them, go see if you like them, and make sure they take Medicaid and they have an available bed. And you'll want to talk to the social worker there. You can also talk to the folks at assisted living and say, hey, oh, they don't have a social worker. Okay. Because if sometimes people are already in a nursing home, and sometimes a nursing home will actually do a PAE test. This might be a good option. If you're interested in nursing homes, yeah, I would look in your area, and talk to the social worker there. And what you might even be able to do is say, hey, can my mother be admitted into this nursing home? And can we get a PAE test? And they might accept her. They might go ahead and do a PAE test that way, in the nursing home. Yeah, but it sounds like yes, so long as she meets those financial requirements, and that she meets those. I mean, it sounds like from what you're explaining that she would likely pass that PAE test. So as long as she meets those medical requirements, yeah. Yeah, of course. All right. When you get your PAE test, they will tell you what category you qualify for. So if you are that nursing home level of care, that full-time care, you can decide if you want one or two. So nursing home or a community setting like assisted living or being at home. If you only qualify for choices three, I believe you'd have to be at home. Right. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. I'm so grateful for you all for being here. Thanks for listening and for taking in this information. And feel free to contact our office if you have any additional questions. We're always happy to help individual clients who are trying to navigate this process. So take care and have a great rest of your day.